Hello, beautiful sewists. Today, I'm super excited to guide you through creating the stunning Allie dress. This gorgeous halter cutout maxi dress features a glamorous backless design and charming tying strings, making it perfect for warm, breezy days or elegant evenings out. Whether you choose a light, airy fabric for a sunny day or a more luxurious material for a special evening, the Allie dress is sure to turn heads. Ready to get started? Grab your sewing kit and let's create something beautiful together. Start by measuring and cutting your fusible interfacing, making sure it's an exact match to your facing front bodice, a pair of back bust pieces, and the front and back skirt facing pieces. Apply them on the wrong side of the fabric using an iron. Place the top front bust and bottom front bust pieces together, making sure their right sides are facing each other. Check that the notches align perfectly. This will ensure your pieces match up just right and pin in place. Now, go ahead and sew along the edge using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once you're done, cut small snips on the curvy edges to reduce bulk. Press the seam open, and then gently press it again towards the bottom for a neat finish. Next, let's add a lovely top stitch for extra durability and a touch of professionalism. From the right side of your fabric, sew a top stitch about 0.2 centimeter away from the seam on the front bottom piece. Remember to catch the seam allowance in your stitching to keep everything tidy and secure. Take your front bodice and pair it with the back bust pieces. Make sure the right sides are facing each other. Line up the side edges neatly and secure them with pins. Then, stitch along these edges using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once sewn, go ahead and press the seams open to keep everything looking crisp and neat. Grab the facing front bodice piece and trace the dart markings from the pattern. Fold the fabric along the dart lines, aligning the dart legs. Make sure to align the dart legs precisely, as this will ensure that your dart ends up in the right spot. You can use pins to hold the fabric in place if you're worried about it slipping. Now it's time to sew. Start at the wide end of the dart and stitch along the marked line until you reach the point. Remember to backstitch at the beginning and end of the dart to secure your stitching. Once you've finished sewing, make sure to give those darts a good press. Use an iron set to the appropriate heat setting for your fabric and press the dart towards the bottom. Then, take the front lining and the back bust lining pieces and place them right sides together, aligning the side edges just like before. Stitch them together using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Remember to leave a small gap of about 3 to 4 centimeters on one side. This will be super handy for turning the fabric right side out later on. After sewing, press these seams open as well. Let's continue with the straps. Fold each strap in half lengthwise, right sides together. Sew neatly along the folded edge. After sewing, go ahead and trim off any excess fabric close to your seam. Next, it's time to turn the straps right side out. This can be a bit tricky, but a safety pin or a bodkin will make it a breeze. Once your straps are turned right side out, give them a good iron to make them nice and flat. Let's get those straps attached. Take your front bust piece. I took the bust lining, but it's the same thing. And grab your straps. Line up the ends of each strap with the top peak of the front bust, arranging them so they cross each other. Make sure each strap is positioned exactly 1 centimeter from the opposite edge. It's a little detail that makes a big difference. Then, with everything held together nicely, top stitch the straps at 0.5 centimeter from the edge. This will keep them firmly attached and looking neat. Alright, let's bring the main bodice and lining bodice together. Place them right sides facing each other, getting ready to join them into one beautiful piece. Carefully pin all around the edges. As you go, make sure the straps are tucked safely inside to avoid catching them with the pins. As marked on the pattern, we must create the ring channels. So, mark the notches and sew all around the bodice, leaving 1 centimeter open on the round areas, where the ring exits are. Start sewing with the round edges at the center back. After these are securely sewn, measure 1 centimeter from these seams and continue sewing the rest of the edges. This little gap is crucial for later, when we'll create the ring channels. Don't forget about the center front ring channel. Do as we did with the center background edges. It's time for some trimming and snipping. Trim the pointy edges to reduce bulk and make small snips along the curved edges to help them lay flat, being careful not to cut through your stitches. Now, the magic part. Turn everything right side out through the small gap you left in the lining. Give everything a good press with your iron to crisp up those seams and edges. Now that your bodice is right side out and looking sharp from a good press, it's time to add the finishing touches. Carefully measure 1 centimeter from the edge all around the rounded parts of the bodice. This is where you'll be top stitching to create the channels for the rings. Go ahead and top stitch these measured lines. This not only secures your fabric, but also prepares the bodice for the rings. Using a hand stitch, close the gap in the lining's side seam. Once your top stitching is complete, slide the rings into the newly created channels. Slide the 5 centimeters one on the center front and the 3 centimeters ones on the back. Let's get started on assembling the skirt, which consists of 8 panels. We'll work our way from the center front to the sides, creating a beautifully flowing piece. Begin by taking the 2 center front skirt pieces. Place them right sides together, ensuring the center, front edges line up perfectly. Match up the notches to make sure everything is aligned just right. Sew along this edge, using a 1 centimeter seam allowance to join them securely. Once sewn, go ahead and overlock the seam to prevent fraying and give your skirt a neat finish. Then, press the seam to one side to keep it flat and smooth. Next, we'll add a top stitch to enhance the look and durability of your seam. From the right side of the fabric, sew a top stitch 0.2 centimeter away from the seam, making sure to catch the seam allowance underneath. Now, let's move on to attaching the side front pieces. Take each side front piece and align them with the edges of the center front piece you just assembled. Make sure to line up the notches on each piece. Once everything is aligned, pin the pieces in place. Sew the pieces together using a 1 centimeter seam allowance, just like you did with the center front. Once sewn, overlock the seam, press to the sides, and top stitch at 0.2 centimeters from the right side, just as we did with the center front. Moving on to the back. Grab your center back pieces. If your fabric is runny, it's a good idea to apply fusible reinforcement tape on the zipper edge, on the wrong side of the fabric. Then, overlock the center back edges separately. Place the center back pieces right sides together. Carefully align the center back edges, making sure to match up the notches. Begin sewing from the zipper notch downward, using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. This method ensures you leave the correct space for inserting the zipper later on. Once you've sewn the seam, press it open. Just like you did with the side front pieces, take each side back piece and position them alongside the center back piece you've just prepared. Align the pieces carefully, making sure the notches on each match up. Now, Sew these pieces together using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. After sewing, move on to overlocking the seams. Finally, add a top stitch about 0.2 centimeter away from the seam on the right side of the fabric, making sure to catch the seam allowance underneath. Let's place our back skirt piece over the front skirt piece, together. They should be pinned together right side to right side and be sure to match up those notches. Sew them in place on the sides, using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Next, we're going to press the seams and overlock. Let's add the hidden zipper. Pin the zipper securely onto the center back of the skirt, starting at 0.5 centimeters from the top seam, ensuring an exact alignment of the zipper's raw edges with those of the fabric. Be certain that the zipper is fully unzipped and that its teeth face toward the skirt. Now let's work on the facing pieces to give your skirt a clean and polished interior finish. Start by taking the front and back facing pieces. Place them right sides together, ensuring that the side edges align perfectly. Once aligned, pin the edges in place. Next, sew the pinned edges using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. After sewing, press the seam open. Lastly, overlock the bottom hem of the facing. It's time to attach the skirt facing to the skirt. Begin by placing the skirt facing over the skirt, with the right sides facing each other. Carefully align the top edges of both the facing and the skirt. Once aligned, pin the facing to the skirt all around the top edge. Pin in place the center back edges, sandwiching the zipper. As with the front bodice, mark in place the ring opening, leaving 1 centimeter open on both sides of the semicircle. Start your sewing at the center back edge, pivot at the corner, and continue all the way round. Don't forget to leave the ring channel openings open. After sewing, trim the round seam allowances and the corners. Trimming reduces bulk and helps the seam lay flat and sharp. Turn the facing right side out and press the edges with an iron. Now, let's create the ring channel. Start by tracing a line 1 centimeter away from the seam around the center front semicircle. Proceed to top stitch along this line. Make sure to catch the facing in the seam as you stitch. You can now insert the ring, attaching the bust to the skirt. Slide the ring into the channel, starting from one side and carefully threading it through to the other side. Now the last step, hemming the dress. You have two options. 1. You can sew a double-folded hem, 0.7 plus 0.7 centimeters. Or 2. You can overlock the hem of the dress, turn into the wrong side, 1.5 centimeters, and top stitch on the overlocked edge. After sewing, give your hem a final press with an iron. This step will sharpen the fold and remove any puckering, leaving your skirt looking impeccably crisp. Your dress is now ready. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon.